I want to tell you something that will change everything you believe about your future. Right now, in this very moment, you are standing at a doorway. Behind you is every disappointment, every failed resolution, every year that ended with you saying maybe next year. And ahead of you, just beyond this threshold, is 2026. But here is what most people will never understand. That year, those 12 months waiting for you, they are not yet written. They are not predetermined. They exist right now as pure potential, as clay waiting for your hands to shape it. And the tool you will use to mold that year into the masterpiece of your life is not willpower, it is not discipline. It is not even hard work, though those things have their place. No, the tool is something far more powerful, far more fundamental. It is your subconscious mind. And I am going to show you exactly how to program it, starting today, starting now, so that when December 2026 arrives, you will look back in absolute wonder at what you have become. Most people approach a new year like they are passengers on a train someone else is driving. They hope for good things. They wish circumstances will change. They make promises to themselves in the fragile light of New Year's morning, and by February, those promises have dissolved like sugar in rain. But you are not here to be a passenger anymore. You are here to learn what I learned decades ago, what changed my life, and the lives of countless others. You are here to learn that you are not at the mercy of fate. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are a creator. And your subconscious mind is the most powerful creative force you will ever touch. It is working right now. Every second, creating your tomorrow based on the beliefs you held yesterday. And if you do not like what it has been creating, if your life has been a repeating loop of the same struggles, the same frustrations, the same almost but not quite, then this is your moment. This is where everything turns. I am not going to give you surface tricks. I am not going to hand you empty affirmations that fade before breakfast. I am going to take you deep into the mechanism of mind, into the laws that govern your reality, and I am going to show you how to work with them instead of against them. Because right now, whether you know it or not, you are already programming your mind. Every thought you think, every word you speak to yourself, every image you hold in your imagination, it is all going in. Your subconscious is recording everything, accepting everything, and then faithfully reproducing it in your experience. So the question is not whether you are programming your mind. The question is, are you programming it deliberately, or are you letting fear, doubt, and old patterns program it for you? What I am about to share with you has been tested across decades, across thousands of lives, across every kind of challenge a human being can face. It works when nothing else works because it works with the fundamental laws of mind. These are not my laws. I did not invent them any more than Newton invented gravity. I simply discovered them, tested them, and learned to use them. And now I am passing them to you, not as theory, but as practical tools you can use today. Because 2026 is not going to make itself magnificent. You are going to make it magnificent. And the time to begin is now, in this moment, with this decision, with this understanding that will unfold as we move forward together. Let me paint you a picture of what most people do not see. Your subconscious mind is like the most faithful servant who ever lived. It never questions. It never argues. It never says, "Are you sure about this?" It simply accepts what you give it and gets to work making it real. If you tell it, "Life is hard, nothing works for me, I always fail," it says, "Yes, absolutely, let me create more experiences of hardship, of things not working, of failure," not because it hates you. Because it loves you so much it will give you exactly what you claim as true. It does not judge the quality of your thoughts. It does not distinguish between a thought that empowers you and a thought that destroys you. It simply says yes to whatever you impress upon it with feeling, with repetition, with acceptance. Think about that for a moment. Really let it sink in. Every limitation you are experiencing right now, every place where life feels stuck or difficult, it began as a thought that you accepted. Somewhere along the way, you impressed an idea upon your subconscious mind, and it went to work creating circumstances that matched that idea. Maybe someone told you that you were not smart enough, and you accepted it. Maybe you failed once and decided that meant you would always fail. Maybe you grew up watching struggle and absorbed the belief that life is supposed to be hard. And your faithful subconscious, that servant who never sleeps, took those beliefs and wove them into your reality. But here is the miracle, the beautiful, revolutionary truth that changes everything. If your subconscious created limitations based on negative beliefs, it can just as easily create abundance, success, health, and joy based on positive ones. The mechanism does not care which direction you use it. It is neutral, like electricity. Electricity will power a hospital where lives are saved, or it will power a prison where people are confined. The electricity does not choose, you choose by how you direct it, and your subconscious mind is the same. It is pure power, waiting for your direction. So if you have been directing it toward fear, toward doubt, toward limitation, that can end today, right now, in this moment. Because now you understand the mechanism, now you see what has been happening, and consciousness is always the first step toward change. I spent years of my life studying this, testing this, watching it work in my own experience and in the lives of others. I have seen people with nothing, with every circumstance against them, rise to extraordinary lives because they learned this secret. And I have seen people with every advantage, every opportunity, every resource, live in quiet desperation because they never learned to work with their own mind. The difference was never in their circumstances. The difference was in what they believed was possible, in what they impressed upon their subconscious, in how they used this incredible creative power that every human being possesses. Now, I need you to understand something crucial before we go further. Programming your subconscious is not about pretending. It is not about lying to yourself or denying reality. If you are broke, you do not stand in front of a mirror and say, "I am rich," while your mind screams, "No, you are not, this is ridiculous." That does not work because you have created conflict between your conscious and subconscious mind. Instead, you work with the natural receptivity of the subconscious. You work with states of mind where the critical, doubting conscious mind steps aside and allows new ideas to go deep. You work with feeling, with imagination, with the state just before sleep when your subconscious is most receptive. You work intelligently, with understanding, not mechanically, not desperately, but with the calm confidence of someone who understands the law and knows it will work. Let me tell you about a man I once knew. He came to me broken. That is the only word for it. His business had failed. His marriage was falling apart. His health was deteriorating. He looked at me with hollow eyes and said, "What is the point? Everything I touch turns to dust." And I told him what I am telling you now. I said, "Your subconscious has been working perfectly. It has been giving you exactly what you have been claiming as true. You have been saying, 'I fail, everything falls apart, nothing works,' and your subconscious has been faithfully creating those exact experiences. But we are going to give it new instructions starting today." He looked skeptical, as you might be looking skeptical right now. That is fine. Skepticism is just fear wearing an intellectual mask. I told him we would start simple. Every night before sleep, I want you to imagine your business thriving. Not with strain, not with desperation, but with ease. See customers happy, see money flowing, see yourself confident. Feel what it feels like to succeed. Do not argue with the doubts that come. Just return to the image, return to the feeling. Do this as your last act before sleep, when your conscious mind is tired and your subconscious is open. He did it. For weeks, nothing seemed to change. This is where most people quit. They try something for a few days, see no immediate result, and say, "See, it does not work." But he kept going because I had explained to him that the subconscious is like soil. You plant a seed, and you do not dig it up every day to see if it is growing. You trust the process. You water it with your continued belief and imagination. And in time, it breaks through the surface. 3 months later, he got a call from someone he had not spoken to in years. An opportunity, a partnership, something he would never have predicted or planned. 6 months after that, his business had not just recovered, it had surpassed anything he had achieved before. His marriage transformed because he transformed. His health returned because stress left his body when hope entered his mind. And he came back to me with tears in his eyes and said, "I cannot believe I lived so many years not knowing this. I cannot believe I suffered so much when the power to change everything was inside me all along." That is what I want for you. Not more years of suffering, not more cycles of hoping and failing, but a fundamental shift in understanding, a moment where you see clearly that you are not powerless, that you have never been powerless, that the life you want is not out there somewhere waiting for permission to appear. It is in here, in your mind, waiting for you to claim it, to impress it upon your subconscious, to live from it in your imagination, until it hardens into fact in your world. So as we move into 2026, I want you to let go of every old story you have been telling yourself. I do not care if you failed 1,000 times before. I do not care if everyone in your family has struggled. I do not care what the economy is doing or what anyone else says is possible. None of that has power over you unless you give it power, unless you accept it, unless you take it into your mind and make it your truth. But you do not have to. You can choose differently. You can stand at this threshold and say, everything before this moment was preparation. Everything before this moment was teaching me what I do not want so I can be clear about what I do want. And from this moment forward, I am programming my mind deliberately, consciously, powerfully, with the vision of the life I intend to live. The question is, will you do it? Will you really do it? Or will you nod along, feel inspired for a moment, and then go back to the same mental habits that have been creating the same results? Because I cannot do this for you. No one can. This is your mind, your subconscious, your life, your 2026, and it will be exactly what you program it to be. So let us begin. Let us go deep into how this really works, why it works, and how you can use it starting today to make 2026 not just better, but the best year of your life. You've been taught to chase, to hustle, to grind, to force your way through life like a battering ram against a locked door. And maybe that worked for a while. Maybe you got some results. But tell me this, how did it feel? Exhausting, wasn't it? Like running on a treadmill that never stops, always one step behind where you think you should be. That's because you were using only half of yourself. The conscious mind, the part that plans and worries and calculates, the part that says, I'll believe it when I see it, and that's the trap right there. Because your subconscious doesn't work that way at all. It says, you'll see it when you believe it. Total reversal. Complete opposite. Your subconscious mind is the builder. It's the architect of your reality. It takes the blueprints you give it through your thoughts, your feelings, your mental images, and it constructs your external world to match. It doesn't question. It doesn't judge. It doesn't say, is this realistic? Can we afford this? What will people think? No. It just builds, faithfully, precisely, automatically. Think of it like this. Your subconscious is like soil, rich, fertile, absolutely neutral soil. It will grow whatever seed you plant in it. Plant an apple seed, you get an apple tree. Plant a weed seed, you get weeds. The soil doesn't care. It doesn't have preferences. It just grows what you give it. And here's the thing most people never realize. You're planting seeds every single day, every single hour, with every thought you think and every word you speak. Most people are gardeners who complain about the weeds while actively planting more weed seeds. They say, I never have enough money, and then wonder why their bank account stays empty. They say, relationships never work out for me, and then attract the same painful patterns over and over. They say, I always get sick this time of year, and right on schedule they're in bed with the flu. Your words are not just describing your reality, they are creating it. Every time you speak, you're giving instructions to your subconscious mind. And here's what most people don't realize. Your subconscious mind doesn't judge. It doesn't argue. It doesn't say, well, that's a bit negative, so I'll ignore it. No. It accepts everything you tell it as truth and immediately goes to work to make that truth your experience. Think about this for a moment. If you had a personal assistant who took every single thing you said as a direct command, would you be more careful with your words? If every time you said, I can't afford that, your assistant went out and made sure you couldn't afford it, would you speak differently? If every time you said, nobody respects me, your assistant arranged circumstances to prove that true, would you think twice before speaking? That's exactly what your subconscious mind does. It's the most loyal, most dedicated assistant you'll ever have. It never sleeps, it never takes a day off. And it takes everything you say with emotion and conviction as an absolute command. I've watched people literally talk themselves into poverty. I've seen them do it year after year, conversation after conversation. Money just slips through my fingers. I'm no good with finances. I'll probably be broke forever. And then they're shocked, absolutely shocked when they can't get ahead, financially. They blame the economy, their job, their circumstances. But the real culprit is standing right in front of the mirror. The same goes for health. How many times have you heard someone say, "I always catch whatever's going around," and sure enough, they do. Or, "My back always acts up when it rains," and like clockwork it does. They think they're just stating facts, just describing reality as it is. But what they're really doing is programming their subconscious mind to continue creating those exact experiences. You see, the subconscious mind doesn't judge or question. It doesn't say, "Wait a minute, is this really true? Is this what you actually want?" No. It simply accepts what you tell it with feeling and conviction. And when you repeatedly declare something about yourself or your life, especially with emotion behind it, you're giving your subconscious mind a direct command. Let me share something that happened in my practice that illustrates this perfectly. A woman came to me suffering from chronic migraines. She'd been to specialists, tried medications, changed her diet, everything. Nothing worked. During our conversation, I noticed something fascinating. She kept saying, "I'm a migraine sufferer. I've always been this way since I was a teenager." I stopped her right there. "Do you hear what you just said?" I asked. "You identified yourself as a migraine sufferer. You've made it part of your identity." She looked confused at first. "But it's true," she protested. "I do suffer from migraines." "Perhaps," I said, "but every time you call yourself a migraine sufferer, you're reinforcing that condition. You're telling your subconscious mind, 'This is who I am. Keep this going.' What if, instead, you started affirming, 'I am healthy and free from pain. My body heals itself naturally'?" She was skeptical, but she tried it. And within weeks, the frequency of her migraines decreased dramatically. Why? Because she stopped programming her subconscious to maintain the condition. She stopped claiming it as her identity. This is the power and the danger of habitual speech. We become what we repeatedly say about ourselves. If you constantly say, "I'm so forgetful," guess what? Your subconscious mind will make sure you forget things. If you say, "I'm always late," you'll find yourself rushing and missing appointments. If you say, "I can't afford that," your subconscious will organize your life around lack and limitation. Your words are not just sounds in the air, they're creative forces that shape your reality. There's a story I love about a man who came to one of Joseph Murphy's lectures years ago. He was drowning in debt, barely making ends meet, and he kept saying to everyone who would listen, "I'm so broke, money just slips through my fingers. I'll never get ahead." Murphy pulled him aside after the lecture and said something that changed his life. "Stop being a prophet of your own misfortune." That phrase hit him like lightning. He realized he'd been declaring his poverty into existence day after day, year after year. His words weren't describing his reality, they were creating it. So he made a decision. He stopped using the word broke. He stopped saying, "I can't afford it." Instead, he began affirming, "Money flows to me easily and naturally. I am a magnet for prosperity." Within 6 months, his financial situation had completely transformed. Not through magic, but through the reorganization of his subconscious mind. When he changed his words, he changed his beliefs. When he changed his beliefs, he changed his actions. And when he changed his actions, his entire world shifted. Your subconscious doesn't argue with you. It doesn't debate whether your statements are wise or foolish. It simply accepts what you consistently tell it and works tirelessly to prove you right. This is why you must become fiercely protective of the words you speak, especially in moments of emotion. When you're frustrated, angry, or discouraged, that's when your words carry the most subconscious weight. That's when you're most likely to plant seeds you'll later regret harvesting. Think about the last time you were really upset. What did you say? "I'm such an idiot. Nothing ever works out for me. I always mess everything up. People never respect me." Those weren't just expressions of emotion, they were commands to your subconscious mind. And your subconscious heard them, accepted them, and began arranging circumstances to match them. Your subconscious doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, "Well, actually, you're not an idiot. Remember that time you solved that complex problem at work?" No. It simply says, "Understood. Processing identity. Idiot. Initiating confirmation protocols." And here's what most people never realize. Your subconscious is so loyal to your words that it will actually filter reality to prove you right. If you say you always mess things up, It will highlight every mistake you make while conveniently making you forget your successes. If you say people never respect you, it will make you hypersensitive to any perceived slight, while causing you to overlook genuine gestures of respect. This is called confirmation bias, but it's far more powerful than most psychologists understand, because it's not just about what you notice, it's about what you attract. Your subconscious mind, accepting your negative declarations as truth, begins broadcasting that frequency into the quantum field of possibilities. And the universe, being a perfect mirror, reflects back circumstances that match that frequency. I've watched this pattern destroy lives. Brilliant people, talented people, people with every advantage except one. There was a woman I knew who was exceptionally gifted in business. Sharp mind, innovative ideas, natural leadership qualities. But she had a habit. Every time something went wrong, a client said no, a project hit a snag, a colleague disagreed with her, she would say, "See, this is exactly why I can't trust anyone." Month after month, year after year, this declaration. And month after month, year after year, people proved untrustworthy. Employees embezzled. Partners broke contracts. Friends betrayed confidences. She would tell me, "You see, I was right. People can't be trusted." But she wasn't right. She was creative. She had created a reality that matched her persistent declarations. Her subconscious mind, accepting "I can't trust anyone" as an instruction, made her blind to trustworthy people while magnetizing untrustworthy ones into her orbit. The tragedy is that she never understood she was the author of her own suffering. This is the power you've been wielding unconsciously. Every casual complaint, every self-deprecating joke, every pessimistic prediction, they're all seeds planted in the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. And that soil doesn't discriminate. It will grow whatever you plant with equal efficiency. This is why your life might feel like it's moving in circles. You keep saying the same things, thinking the same thoughts, expecting different results. But the law doesn't work that way. Your subconscious is simply being obedient. It's giving you exactly what you've been programming it to deliver. I want you to conduct an experiment for the next 24 hours, just one day. Become a witness to your own words. Don't try to change them yet, just notice them. Listen to what you say when you wake up. "I'm so tired. I hate Mondays. I can never get enough sleep." Notice what you say about your work, your relationships, your body, your future. Most people are shocked when they actually pay attention. They realize they've been running a negative commentary track in their minds all day long, and they've been verbalizing it to anyone who will listen. They've been their own worst enemy, and they didn't even know it. Here's what makes this even more powerful and more dangerous. Your subconscious doesn't just respond to your words when you're alone. It's recording everything you declare in conversation. When you meet a friend and they ask how you are, what do you say? If you immediately launch into a list of complaints, your aches, your struggles, your disappointments, you're not just venting, you're affirming, you're declaring, you're instructing your subconscious mind about what your reality is. The ancient traditions understood this. That's why so many spiritual practices emphasized control over speech. It wasn't about being fake or dishonest. It was about recognizing that your words are creative forces. They're not neutral. They're either building or destroying, attracting or repelling, healing or harming. Think about someone you know who always seems to have drama in their life. Listen carefully to how they speak. I guarantee you'll hear them predict it, expect it, almost invite it with their words. Something always goes wrong. I knew this would happen. It's always something with me. And when those words leave their lips, they're not just describing their reality, they're creating it. They're sending out an order to the universe, a command to their subconscious mind, and it obeys without question. Your subconscious doesn't argue. It doesn't say, "Are you sure about this?" It simply accepts what you tell it as truth and goes to work making it real. This is where most people lose everything without even realizing it. They think their words are harmless, just venting, just being realistic, just expressing how they feel. But feelings don't create reality. Beliefs do. And your words reveal your beliefs. Every time you say, "I can't afford this," you're not stating a fact, you're reinforcing a belief in lack. Every time you say, "I'm so tired," you're programming exhaustion into your body. Every time you say, "I'll never find love," you're building a wall between yourself and the very thing you desire. The universe doesn't hear your excuses. It doesn't care about your justifications. It only responds to the vibration you're sending out. and your words carry a very specific vibration. Think about it. When you say something negative about yourself or your life, how does it make you feel? Heavy, defeated, stuck. That feeling is the vibration you're broadcasting, and that's exactly what you'll attract more of. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine speaking only words that align with what you want. Not as lies, not as fake positivity, but as declarations of the truth you're creating. Money flows to me easily. I am healthy and full of energy. Love finds me everywhere I go. Feel the difference? Those words carry a completely different vibration. They open doors instead of closing them. They invite miracles instead of pushing them away. But here's where it gets tricky. You can't just say these words with your mouth while your mind screams the opposite. That's not faith, that's wishful thinking. And wishful thinking has no power. True transformation happens when your words and your beliefs align. When you speak something and mean it. When you declare it with such certainty that your subconscious has no choice but to accept it as law. And here's the beautiful truth that most people miss. Your subconscious doesn't just respond to the words you say out loud. It responds to every thought you entertain, every internal conversation you have with yourself throughout the day. Those quiet moments when you're driving to work, standing in line at the grocery store, lying in bed before sleep, those are the moments when your real programming is happening. Not in the grand declarations you make to impress others, but in the silent dialogue you maintain with yourself when no one else is listening. I remember a woman who came to me years ago, frustrated beyond measure. She told me she'd been affirming abundance for months. She had sticky notes on her mirror. She repeated her affirmations every morning without fail. And yet, nothing was changing. Her financial situation remained exactly the same. So I asked her a simple question: what do you say to yourself when you open your bills? She paused, then admitted, I panic. I think, I can't afford this. Where is this money going to come from? I'm never going to get ahead. There it was. The contradiction that was sabotaging everything. She was speaking wealth for 5 minutes in the morning and poverty for the remaining 23 hours and 55 minutes of her day. Your subconscious doesn't care about your formal affirmation time. It's recording everything, every casual thought, every knee-jerk reaction, every moment of doubt you indulge when life presents you with evidence that contradicts what you're trying to create. This is why awareness is your most powerful tool. You must become the guardian of your inner dialogue. You must catch yourself in those unguarded moments when your old programming tries to reassert itself. And when you catch those negative thoughts, and you will, because they're habits that have been years in the making, you don't beat yourself up. You simply redirect. You don't have to believe the new thought completely at first. You just have to be willing to consider it. Instead of, I can't afford this, try, I'm finding new ways to create income. Instead of, this always happens to me, try, I'm learning to create different outcomes. Instead of, I'm not good enough, try, I'm discovering my true worth. Notice how these new thoughts don't deny your current reality. They don't pretend everything is perfect, but they open a door. They create possibility where there was only limitation before. And here's what happens when you practice this consistently. Your subconscious mind begins to accept these new thoughts as instructions. Remember, your subconscious doesn't argue. It doesn't debate whether you deserve better circumstances. It simply works with whatever you give it most consistently. Think of it like updating software on your phone. The old program had bugs. It crashed, it froze, it drained your battery. The new version runs smoother, faster, more efficiently. But you have to choose to install the update. Nobody can do it for you. Your mind works the same way. Those limiting beliefs? They're outdated programming, running in the background, consuming your energy, creating errors in your life experience. The new empowering thoughts? They're the updated version, ready to install. But you have to consciously choose them, over and over, until they become your default operating system. I've watched this transformation happen in real time. I've seen people who were convinced they'd never find love suddenly attract beautiful relationships. I've witnessed individuals who believed they were destined to struggle financially create unexpected abundance. I've observed those who thought they'd always be sick experience remarkable healing. What changed? Not their external circumstances, at least not at first. What changed was their willingness to question the thoughts they'd been accepting as absolute truth. They realized that just because they'd been thinking something for 20 years didn't make it true, it just made it familiar. And familiar feels like truth to us. That's the trap. We mistake repetition for reality. We assume that because we've always thought this way, it must be correct. But your thoughts aren't facts. They're just thoughts. And thoughts can be changed. You don't have to believe every thought that pops into your head. You have the power to choose which thoughts you water and which ones you let wither away. Think of your mind like a garden. If you plant seeds of fear, doubt, and negativity, that's what will grow. But if you plant seeds of faith, hope, and possibility, your garden transforms into something beautiful. And here's the critical part. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, "Are you sure about that?" It simply accepts what you consistently feed it and works day and night to make it your reality. So when you keep saying, "I'm not good enough," your subconscious says, "Okay, boss, not good enough it is. Let me show you all the evidence to support that belief." But when you start saying, "I am worthy, I am capable, I am enough," your subconscious gets to work on that instead. It starts finding opportunities, opening doors, and shifting your entire reality to match that new belief. This isn't positive thinking for the sake of feeling good. This is about reprogramming the operating system of your mind. Let me share something that changed everything for me. There was a time when I couldn't see past my circumstances. Every morning, I woke up to the same problems, the same limitations, the same disappointments. And I thought, this is just my life. This is my reality. But then I learned something profound. Reality isn't fixed. It's fluid. It's constantly being shaped by the dominant thoughts and beliefs you hold in your subconscious mind. The moment I understood that, I stopped being a victim of my circumstances and became the creator of my experience. I started asking myself different questions. Instead of, "Why does this always happen to me?" I began asking, "What do I want to experience instead?" Instead of focusing on what was wrong, I started imagining what could be right. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to shift. Not because the world changed, but because I changed. My perception changed. My expectations changed. And as my inner world transformed, my outer world followed. That's the power you have access to right now. Not someday, not when you're more qualified or more deserving, right now. Because your subconscious mind doesn't recognize the difference between a vivid mental experience and a physical one. When you imagine yourself succeeding with emotional intensity, your subconscious accepts it as real and begins reorganizing your entire reality to match that inner conviction. Think about this carefully. Every night before you sleep, your conscious mind relaxes its grip. The critical, doubting voice grows quiet. And in that precious window, your subconscious becomes incredibly receptive to suggestion. This is why your thoughts before sleep are so monumentally important. What you dwell on in those final moments before unconsciousness doesn't just fade away. It sinks deep into the fertile soil of your subconscious mind, where it grows and multiplies throughout the night. If you fall asleep worrying about your problems, replaying your failures, imagining worst-case scenarios, you're literally programming your subconscious to create more of exactly what you don't want. You're planting seeds of limitation that will bear fruit in your waking life. But when you fall asleep feeling grateful, imagining your ideal outcome is already accomplished, dwelling in the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you're doing something extraordinary. You're bypassing all conscious resistance and speaking directly to the creative power within you. I've seen people transform chronic health conditions simply by changing their mental diet before sleep. I've watched individuals attract unexpected opportunities by consistently falling asleep in the feeling of their goal accomplished. The mechanism is always the same. Impressed feeling becomes expressed form. Your subconscious mind is working 24 hours a day. It never sleeps. It's always creating, always manifesting, always bringing into your experience whatever corresponds to your dominant mental states. So the question isn't whether your subconscious is powerful. The question is, what are you feeding it? What images are you allowing to take root in that incredibly fertile ground? Most people are completely unconscious of this process. They let random thoughts, fears, and doubts drift through their minds before sleep, never realizing they're literally programming tomorrow's experiences. But there's a powerful technique I want to share with you right now. It's called the Times Lullaby Method *, and it's one of the most profound ways to reprogram your subconscious mind. Here's how it works. In those precious moments before sleep, when you're hovering between waking and dreaming, you gently repeat a simple phrase that embodies your desire times as if it's already true *. Not a plea, not a hope, not a wish, a declaration of present reality. Let's say you're struggling financially. Instead of lying there worrying about bills, instead of rehearsing your lack, you would softly repeat to yourself, I am financially secure. Money flows to me easily and naturally. You say it with feeling, with the gentle rhythm of a lullaby. You don't force it, you don't strain. You simply let it drift through your consciousness like a leaf floating on a peaceful stream. And here's what's critical. You must feel it as real, not as something you want, not as something coming someday, but as something that is times true right now in this moment. You wrap yourself in that feeling the way you'd wrap yourself in a warm blanket. You let it soothe you, you let it comfort you, and then you drift off to sleep with that feeling as your last conscious impression. Do you see the genius of this? You're bypassing all the intellectual resistance. You're slipping your desire past the watchful guards of logic and doubt, and you're depositing it directly into the subconscious at the moment when it's most receptive, most open, most ready to accept new programming. This isn't just theory. Thousands of people have transformed their lives using this exact method. They've healed their bodies, attracted their soulmates, created financial abundance, and manifested opportunities that seemed impossible, all by changing what they impressed upon their subconscious minds in those final moments before sleep. And here's what makes this practice even more powerful. The subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. When you fall asleep feeling the joy of your wish fulfilled, your subconscious accepts it as fact. It then goes to work, reorganizing your inner world to match that impression. Think about this for a moment. Your subconscious controls your heartbeat, your breathing, the healing of your wounds, the digestion of your food. It orchestrates billions of cellular processes every second without your conscious awareness. This same intelligence can orchestrate the circumstances, meetings, ideas, and opportunities needed to manifest your desire. But it needs clear instruction. That's why the moments before sleep are so sacred. You're not just daydreaming, you're not just hoping, you're actually impressing your subconscious with a new pattern, a new blueprint. And when that impression becomes dominant, your outer world begins to conform to it. I've seen people manifest healing when doctors had given up hope. I've watched individuals attract their ideal partners after years of loneliness. I've witnessed business opportunities appear seemingly out of nowhere, simply because someone persisted in impressing their subconscious with their desired state before sleep. The key word here is persistence. One night of practice won't necessarily transform your life, but 30 nights will begin to shift things. 90 nights will create noticeable changes. 6 months of this practice can completely revolutionize your circumstances. Why? Because you're literally rewiring your subconscious programming. You're replacing old beliefs, old patterns, old impressions with new ones. Every night you fall asleep in the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you're weakening the old pattern and strengthening the new one. Eventually, the new pattern becomes dominant, and when it does, your outer world has no choice but to reflect it. This is law. This is how the subconscious operates. This is law. This is how the subconscious operates. Now, I want you to understand something crucial about the nature of this law. The subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't debate. It doesn't say, well, I think you're wrong about that. No. It accepts what you give it with absolute neutrality. If you say, I am unworthy, it says, yes, you are unworthy, and begins to create circumstances that prove you right. If you say, I am blessed and favored, it says, yes, you are blessed and favored, and moves heaven and earth to demonstrate that truth in your life. This is why your self-concept is so monumentally important. It's not just about feeling good about yourself, though that's a beautiful byproduct. It's about recognizing that the opinion you hold of yourself is the very template from which your entire life is being constructed, moment by moment, day by day. Think about someone who sees themselves as unlucky. They wake up expecting problems. They anticipate delays, disappointments, obstacles. And what happens? They find them. Not because the universe has singled them out for punishment, but because their subconscious mind is faithfully working to align their outer experience with their inner conviction. They notice every red light, every closed door, every missed opportunity, and they say, see, I told you, I'm just unlucky, and the cycle deepens. Now take someone who sees themselves as fortunate. Same world, same challenges available to everyone, but they expect good things. They anticipate solutions, opportunities, open doors, and their subconscious mind, faithful servant that it is, guides them toward experiences that confirm this belief. They notice the parking spot that opens up, the chance encounter that leads to a breakthrough, the unexpected check in the mail, and they say, "See, I'm so blessed." And that cycle deepens too. Same world, different self-concept, completely different life experience. Here's what most people don't realize. You are not stuck with the self-concept you currently have. It was formed, largely, by repetition and acceptance of ideas from your past. Things people said to you, experiences you interpreted in certain ways, conclusions you drew when you were too young to question them. But just as it was formed by repetition, it can be reformed by repetition. You can choose a new self-concept. You can decide today who you want to be in your own mind, and then consistently affirm that identity until your subconscious accepts it as fact. This is where I've seen the most profound shifts happen in people's lives. Not through grand gestures or dramatic events, but through the simple, quiet act of changing their inner dialogue. I've known people who spent decades believing they were shy, awkward, unlovable, only to discover that these were never fixed traits, but learned patterns, and patterns can be unlearned. The subconscious doesn't care whether something is objectively true, it only cares whether you've repeated it enough times. If you've told yourself for 20 years that you're bad with money, your subconscious has filed that away as fact. It will then guide your decisions, your impulses, your very perception of financial opportunities through that filter. You'll overlook chances to earn, you'll make careless spending choices, not because you're actually bad with money, but because your subconscious is faithfully executing the program you've given it. But here's the beautiful part. You can rewrite that program starting today. You can begin affirming, "I am financially wise. Money flows to me easily. I make sound decisions with my resources." At first, your conscious mind might rebel. It might say, "That's not true. Look at your bank account." But you persist anyway. You repeat it morning and evening. You feel the truth of it as if it's already real. And gradually, subtly, your subconscious begins to accept this new identity. Then something remarkable happens. You start noticing opportunities you would have missed before. You make different choices without even thinking about it. Ideas come to you. Your behavior aligns with your new self-concept automatically, effortlessly. This isn't willpower. This isn't forcing yourself. This is the natural result of changing your inner foundation. This is why affirmations sometimes fail. People repeat words without changing their beliefs. They say, "I am confident," while internally feeling terrified. They declare, "I am wealthy," while their dominant thought remains focused on lack. The subconscious doesn't respond to words, it responds to conviction, to feeling, to the emotional truth behind your mental images. When you truly change your internal state, the external world must reorganize itself to match. Not because you're manipulating reality, but because you're now perceiving and responding to opportunities that were always there. You're making different choices. You're emitting a different energy. You're showing up as a different person. Think about how you feel when you're genuinely confident versus when you're pretending to be confident. The difference is palpable. People sense it. Opportunities respond to it. Your body language changes. Your voice changes. The risks you're willing to take change. That's the power of internal transformation manifesting outward. Now here's where most people get stuck. They want the external change first. They think, "Once I have the money, then I'll feel abundant. Once I find the relationship, then I'll feel loved. Once I achieve the success, then I'll feel confident." But the universe doesn't work that way. Your subconscious mind doesn't work that way. You must become it internally first. You must cultivate the feeling of already having it, already being it. This isn't delusion, this is creation. You're not pretending something false is true. You're aligning yourself with the version of reality where it is already true. You're tuning your mental frequency to match the station you want to receive. I've watched people transform their entire financial situation by first transforming how they feel about money. Not by denying their current circumstances, but by refusing to let those circumstances define their identity. They began to see themselves as abundant, even while their bank account disagreed. And slowly, inevitably, the bank account began to catch up to their new self-concept. This isn't magical thinking. This is how belief shapes behavior, and behavior shapes results. The person who sees themselves as wealthy doesn't constantly check their bank balance with anxiety. They don't frantically refresh their email hoping for good news. They move through their day with a calm certainty, making decisions from abundance rather than scarcity. And here's what happens next. Opportunities begin to appear that were invisible before. Not because the universe magically created them, but because their awareness has shifted. They notice the job posting they would have scrolled past. They accept the invitation they would have declined. They have the conversation they would have avoided. I've watched this unfold countless times. Someone truly decides they are capable of earning more. Within weeks, they're negotiating a raise they'd never had the courage to ask for. They're launching the side project they'd been postponing for years. They're saying yes to opportunities that terrify and excite them in equal measure. The external world hasn't changed. They have. This is why affirmations alone rarely work. You can say I am wealthy 1,000 times, but if you're saying it while feeling poor, while acting poor, while thinking poor thoughts, you're just creating noise. The words mean nothing if the self-concept beneath them remains unchanged. Murphy taught that you must feel the reality of your desire fulfilled, not as a distant hope, but as a present fact. This requires imagination, yes, but more importantly, it requires emotional conviction. Think of an actor preparing for a role. They don't just memorize lines. They inhabit the character. They think as that person thinks. They move as that person moves. They make choices as that person would make them. By the time the camera rolls, the transformation is complete. The character isn't something they're pretending to be, it's who they've become, at least temporarily. Your new self-concept works the same way. You must inhabit it so fully that it ceases to feel like pretending. You wear it until it becomes your skin. And here's what makes this work so powerful. You don't need anyone's permission to change your self-concept. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to prove yourself worthy first. This is an internal revolution, not an external negotiation. I've watched people wait years for validation that never comes. They wait for their parents to finally see their worth. They wait for their boss to recognize their talent. They wait for their partner to appreciate them, and while they wait, they reinforce the very self-concept that keeps them invisible. You must understand this. The world responds to the person you believe yourself to be, not the person you're trying to become. If you believe you're unappreciated, you'll find evidence everywhere. If you believe you're invisible, people will look right through you. But when you change your inner conviction, when you fully inhabit a new self-concept, the world has no choice but to reflect it back to you. This is why affirmations alone often fail. You can stand in front of a mirror and repeat, I am confident, 1,000 times. But if underneath those words you feel like an imposter, you're building on sand. Real transformation happens when you shift the foundation itself, when you change not just what you say, but what you assume to be true about yourself. Let me give you a concrete example. I once knew a woman who'd spent 15 years in the same administrative position. She was brilliant, capable, organized beyond measure, but she'd convinced herself she was just support staff. That was her identity, that was her prison. When she came to understand these principles, she didn't immediately apply for a promotion. That would have been acting from her old self-concept. Instead, she began to inhabit a new one. She started seeing herself as a strategic thinker, as someone whose insights mattered. She stopped apologizing for her ideas. She stopped diminishing her contributions with phrases like, this might be stupid, but... Within 3 months, her boss asked her to lead a major project. Within 6 months, she was promoted. But here's what's crucial. The promotion wasn't the goal. It was simply the natural consequence of her new self-concept. The external world caught up with her internal transformation. This distinction matters more than most people realize. When you chase the promotion, the relationship, the money you operate from lack, your energy says, I need this because I don't have it. And the universe, reading your dominant feeling, gives you more experiences of not having it. But when you assume the state of the person who naturally has these things, you operate from fulfillment. Your energy says, I am already complete. And from that place of wholeness, the things you desire flow to you because they match your vibration. Think of it like this. A wealthy person doesn't wake up every morning affirming, I am rich, I am rich, I am rich, with desperation in their voice. They simply move through their day with the quiet confidence that resources are available. They don't check their bank account obsessively. They don't panic when bills arrive. Their assumption of abundance is so natural, so normalized, that it requires no effort. That's the state you're cultivating. Not the frantic energy of someone trying to convince themselves of something they don't believe, but the calm, settled knowing of someone who has already arrived. Now, you might be thinking, but I'm not there yet. I'm still dealing with debt, or a difficult relationship, or a job I hate. How can I assume a state that contradicts my current reality? This is where most people get stuck. They let present circumstances dictate their inner state. They say, I'll feel successful when I get the success. I'll feel loved when I find the relationship. I'll feel peaceful when the problems resolve. But that's backwards. The feeling must come first. The state must be assumed before the evidence appears. I'm going to share something that might challenge everything you've been taught. Your present circumstances are not the cause of your state. They are the effect. They are the outpicturing of states you've been occupying, often unconsciously, for weeks, months, or years. That difficult boss? A reflection of your assumption that authority figures are obstacles? That financial struggle? A manifestation of your deep-seated belief in scarcity? That health issue? Often connected to long-held emotional patterns and self-concepts? Your subconscious mind is always listening, always recording, always creating. It doesn't judge whether something is good for you or bad for you. It simply accepts what you consistently think and feel as true, and then goes about making it your reality. This is why awareness is the first step toward transformation. You cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot heal what you pretend doesn't exist. The moment you become conscious of these limiting patterns, you've already begun the process of dissolving them. But here's where most people stumble. They become aware of their negative beliefs, and then they make a critical mistake. They fight against them. They try to suppress them. They wage war on their own thoughts. And what happens? The very act of fighting something gives it energy. Resistance creates persistence. What you resist, persists. Instead, you must learn the art of gentle substitution. Don't fight the old thought. Simply choose a new one. Don't battle the limiting belief. Quietly replace it with an empowering truth. When the thought, I'm not good enough, arises, you don't push it away violently. You simply say, thank you for trying to protect me, but I now choose to know that I am worthy and capable. This is not positive thinking in the shallow sense. This is conscious reprogramming. You're speaking directly to the part of your mind that controls your automatic behaviors, your emotional responses, your life outcomes. And you must do it with feeling. The subconscious responds to emotionalized thought. A dry, mechanical affirmation has little power, but an affirmation spoken with conviction, with feeling, with the emotional quality of the wish fulfilled, this penetrates deeply. This creates change. Think of it like this. Your subconscious is like rich, fertile soil. Your thoughts are seeds. Now, you can plant seeds of lack, limitation, and fear. And that soil, being neutral and incredibly powerful, will grow those seeds into a harvest of struggle. Or you can plant seeds of abundance, health, and love. And that same soil will grow those seeds into a magnificent harvest of blessings. The soil doesn't care. It simply grows what you plant. Your subconscious doesn't judge. It simply manifests what you consistently impress upon it. And right now, in this very moment, you're planting seeds. The question is, what kind of seeds are you choosing? Are you planting seeds of prosperity or poverty, health or illness, love or fear, joy or resentment? Every thought is a seed. Every word you speak to yourself is watering that seed. Every emotion you feel is the sunlight that makes it grow. And here's the powerful truth. You can choose to pull out the weeds and plant new seeds at any moment. You can stop right now and say, I reject the harvest of fear I've been cultivating. I choose to plant something new. This isn't about toxic positivity. This isn't about pretending everything's perfect when it's not. This is about understanding the fundamental law of mind. What you focus on expands. If you're constantly focused on your debts, what expands? More debt. If you're constantly focused on your illness, what expands? More illness. If you're constantly focused on how lonely you are, what expands? More loneliness. But when you shift your focus, when you begin to water the seeds of what you desire instead of what you fear, everything changes. When you focus on abundance, even when your bank account is empty, you're planting seeds of prosperity. When you focus on vitality, even when your body feels weak, you're planting seeds of health. When you focus on love, even when you're alone, you're planting seeds of connection. This isn't magical thinking. This is how your mind works. Your subconscious doesn't distinguish between what's happening in your external world and what's happening in your internal world. It only knows what you're consistently impressing upon it. So if you're constantly dwelling in thoughts of lack, your subconscious says, okay, they want more experiences of lack. Let me create that for them. If you're constantly dwelling in thoughts of unworthiness, your subconscious says, they believe they're unworthy. Let me confirm that belief with matching experiences. Your subconscious is the most faithful servant you'll ever have. It never questions. It never argues. It simply says, yes, and so it is. This is why affirmations work, not because they're magic words, but because they're deliberate seeds you're choosing to plant. When you say, I am healthy, I am prosperous, I am loved, you're not lying to yourself. You're planting seeds in the garden of your subconscious mind. And here's what most people don't realize. The subconscious doesn't distinguish between a seed you plant intentionally and a seed you plant carelessly. It will grow whatever you give it. If you hand it seeds of doubt, it will grow doubt. If you hand it seeds of fear, it will grow fear. But if you hand it seeds of faith, abundance, peace, it will grow those just as readily. The question is never times you plant. The question is, what are you planting? I've watched people transform their entire lives simply by becoming conscious gardeners. They stopped scattering seeds randomly. They stopped letting every passing thought, every worry, every criticism take root. They became deliberate, intentional, selective, and the harvest changed everything. Now, you might be thinking, but I've tried affirmations before. I've said the words. Nothing happened. Let me tell you why. Most people treat affirmations like they're ordering from a menu. They say the words once, twice, maybe a few times, and then they sit back and wait for delivery. But that's not how the subconscious works. The subconscious responds to repetition, feeling, and conviction. When you say an affirmation without feeling, it's like dropping a seed on concrete. Nothing happens. The seed needs soil, rich, fertile, emotional soil. You must times feel times the truth of what you're saying, even if your current circumstances don't reflect it yet. This is not pretending. This is not denial. This is choosing the state you wish to experience and giving it emotional reality in your inner world first. I am healthy. Feel the vitality in your body as you say it. Sense the energy flowing through you. I am prosperous. Feel the relief, the freedom, the gratitude that abundance brings. I am loved. Feel the warmth, the acceptance, the connection. These feelings are the water that makes the seed grow. Without them, you're just reciting empty syllables. And here's what most people miss. The feeling doesn't have to match the words perfectly at first. You don't need to feel like a millionaire when you say, I am prosperous. That's too big a leap for most minds. Instead, you start with something easier. You feel grateful. You feel peaceful. You feel hopeful. These gentler emotions are bridges. They're stepping stones that lead you from where you are to where you want to be. When you say, I am healthy, and you feel even a small sense of relief, even a tiny spark of, maybe this is possible, that's enough. That's the seed taking root. I remember working with someone who was drowning in debt. The affirmation, I am financially free, made him feel like a liar. It triggered resistance, cynicism, doubt. So we changed the approach. Instead, he started with, I am open to financial improvement. Much softer, much more believable. And when he said those words, he could genuinely feel a sense of openness, curiosity, possibility. That feeling was real. That feeling was the water. And over time, as his circumstances began to shift, small, unexpected checks, a side opportunity, a debt forgiven, his feelings evolved. The affirmation grew stronger. I am improving financially became easy to believe. Then money flows to me regularly. Then, eventually, I am prosperous. You see the progression? You're not forcing yourself to believe the impossible. You're building a ladder, one rung at a time, and each rung is supported by genuine feeling. Now let's talk about repetition, because this is where most people give up too soon. They say an affirmation 10 times, 20 times, maybe for a week, and then they quit because nothing happened. Listen carefully. Your subconscious mind has been programmed by thousands upon thousands of repetitions over your entire lifetime. Every time someone told you money doesn't grow on trees, every time you heard people like us don't succeed, every time you thought I'm not good enough, those were repetitions. And they added up, layer upon layer upon layer, until they became your default programming. Do you really think 10 repetitions of a new idea will override decades of old programming? Of course not. You need consistency. You need patience. You need to understand that you're rewiring neural pathways, and that takes time. But here's the good news. You don't need as much time as you think. When you combine words with feeling, when you engage both the conscious and subconscious mind, the process accelerates dramatically. Think of it like learning to ride a bicycle. At first, it feels impossible. Your conscious mind is overwhelmed, trying to balance, pedal, steer, and watch where you're going all at the same time. But once your subconscious learns the pattern, you never forget. You can hop on a bike years later and ride effortlessly. The neural pathway has been established. The same thing happens with your affirmations. Right now, your conscious mind might be saying, "This feels weird. This isn't working. I don't believe this yet." That's normal. That's just the learning phase. But your subconscious is absorbing every repetition, every emotion, every visualization. It's building new pathways, creating new patterns, establishing new beliefs. And here's something most people don't realize. Your subconscious doesn't care whether something is objectively true. It only cares whether you've accepted it as true. This is why people can hold completely false beliefs with absolute conviction. They've repeated those beliefs so many times, felt them so deeply, that their subconscious has accepted them as reality. The beautiful thing is, this mechanism works both ways. If negative beliefs can be programmed in through repetition and emotion, then positive beliefs can be programmed in the exact same way. You're not fighting against your nature, you're working with it. You're using the same mental laws that created your limitations to now create your freedom. I want you to understand something crucial. Every single limitation you have right now was learned. You weren't born believing you weren't good enough. You weren't born afraid of success or intimacy or visibility. You weren't born thinking money was hard to come by or that happiness was for other people. Every single one of those beliefs was programmed in through repetition, emotion, and acceptance, which means every single one of them can be unprogrammed. You can install new software. You can rewrite the code. You can become the programmer instead of the program. This is where faith becomes practical. Not blind faith, but intelligent faith based on understanding how your mind actually works. When you know that repetition plus emotion equals subconscious acceptance, and subconscious acceptance equals automatic manifestation, then practicing affirmations isn't wishful thinking. It's applied psychology. It's mental mechanics. It's you deliberately choosing what gets planted in the garden of your mind. And here's what most people miss. This isn't a one-time event. You don't just plant positive thoughts once and expect a lifetime harvest. You maintain the garden, you tend it daily, you water it with repetition, you pull weeds as soon as they appear, because your subconscious mind, it doesn't judge. It doesn't discriminate. It accepts what you repeatedly feed it. If you wake up every morning and immediately start cataloging everything that's wrong, your body, your bank account, your relationships, you're watering the weeds, you're fertilizing failure, you're giving energy and attention to exactly what you don't want. But if you wake up and deliberately direct your thoughts, if you start your day by affirming what you're becoming, by visualizing the life you're building, by feeling gratitude for what's already working, you're watering the flowers. You're strengthening the neural pathways that serve you. I've seen people transform their entire existence by changing nothing but their mental diet. Same job, same circumstances, same challenges, but a completely different inner world. And guess what happened? The outer world began to shift. Not through magic. Through perception, decision-making, opportunity recognition, and inspired action. One man told me he spent years convinced he was bad with money. That belief was a weed that had taken over his entire mental garden. He lived paycheck to paycheck, always stressed, always scrambling. Then he started challenging that identity. He began affirming, "I am financially intelligent. Money flows to me easily. I make wise decisions with resources." At first, it felt like a lie. That's normal. You're contradicting years of conditioning." But he persisted, and within weeks, he noticed something. He started seeing financial opportunities he'd walked past 1,000 times. A side project, a negotiation he'd been avoiding, a skill he could monetize. His circumstances hadn't changed, his awareness had. His subconscious mind, now programmed differently, was filtering reality through a new lens. That's the power of deliberate mental cultivation. You're not waiting for life to improve so you can think better thoughts. You're thinking better thoughts so life can improve. And here's what most people miss. This process doesn't require massive action right away. It requires consistent mental action. 5 minutes of focused, emotionally charged visualization carries more transformative power than 5 hours of scattered wishful thinking. You see, your subconscious doesn't measure time the way your conscious mind does. It measures intensity. It measures conviction. A single moment of absolute belief where every fiber of your being accepts something as true can create more change than years of half-hearted affirmations. I've watched people transform their financial circumstances not by working harder, but by stopping the internal war against prosperity. They stopped rehearsing poverty. They stopped giving emotional energy to lack. They redirected that same energy toward images and feelings of abundance, and their external world had no choice but to reorganize itself around this new dominant vibration. This isn't about pretending problems don't exist. It's about refusing to give them the throne of your consciousness. You acknowledge what is, but you don't worship it. You don't build monuments to your difficulties in the temple of your mind. When you catch yourself spiraling into worry, you're not suppressing it, you're redirecting it. You're exercising your divine right to choose what occupies your mental real estate. Worry is just imagination misused. The same faculty that creates anxiety can create anticipation. The same mental energy that produces dread can produce excitement. So you begin to notice the pivot points throughout your day. Those moments when your mind wants to drift toward complaint, toward limitation, toward replaying past hurts, and instead of following that well-worn path, you pause, you breathe, you deliberately choose a different direction. You ask yourself, what would I think about if I truly believed my good was on its way? And then you think that thought, you marinate in that feeling, you let it fill your chest, your throat, your awareness. This becomes your practice. Not once a day during meditation, but dozens of times throughout your waking hours. These small course corrections, these tiny acts of mental sovereignty, accumulate into massive transformation. Most people wait for the feeling to change before they redirect the mind. They think, once I feel better, then I'll think differently. But this is backwards. The thought creates the feeling, not the other way around. When you catch yourself in the anxious loop, you don't need to wait until the anxiety passes. You redirect immediately. You don't negotiate with the old pattern. You don't analyze why it appeared. You simply and firmly turn your attention to what you want to experience. This is where most spiritual teachings get it wrong. They tell you to sit with your feelings, to honor your emotions. And while there's a time for self-awareness, there's also a time for decisive mental action. Murphy understood this. He knew that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to entertain destructive thoughts, regardless of how they feel. Think of it like this. If a stranger walked up to you on the street and started telling you that you're worthless, that your life is falling apart, that nothing will ever work out, would you sit down with them and have a long conversation? Would you honor their perspective? No. You'd walk away. You'd dismiss them immediately. Yet when your own mind offers these same narratives, you treat them as sacred truth. You give them your full attention. You let them run the show. The practice we're discussing is learning to treat negative mental patterns with the same dismissiveness you'd treat a hostile stranger. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The more you practice this redirection, the less effort it requires. In the beginning, it feels like pushing a boulder uphill. Your mind snaps back to worry within seconds. You have to redirect constantly, and it's exhausting. But after a few weeks, something shifts. The new pattern begins to establish itself. The mental grooves deepen in the direction you've chosen, and suddenly, the positive state becomes more natural than the negative one. Your baseline shifts. This is not positive thinking. This is neuroplasticity in action. You're literally rewiring your brain's default settings. Science now confirms what Murphy taught decades ago. Sustained attention changes brain structure. Where attention goes, neural pathways grow. And here's the beautiful part: once the new pattern is established, it becomes self-reinforcing. Your external circumstances begin to shift because you're showing up differently. You make different decisions. You notice different opportunities. You attract different experiences. Not because the universe magically rearranged itself, but because you changed the lens through which you perceive and interact with reality. This is the promise Murphy made, and it's one that countless people have proven true. Your mind is not your enemy. It's the most powerful tool you possess. But like any tool, it must be directed. It must be trained. It must be brought under your conscious command. And this is where most people stumble. They treat the subconscious like a stranger. They ignore it for years, filling it with doubt, fear, negativity, complaint. Then one day they decide they want something: a better job, a healed body, financial freedom, and they expect instant obedience. But the subconscious doesn't work that way. It's like trying to steer a ship that's been drifting for decades. You can't just grab the wheel and expect it to turn on command. You must first clear the rust. You must oil the gears. You must build trust with the mechanism itself. And that begins with awareness. You see, most of us are not aware of what we're feeding our subconscious mind every single day. We let the news program us. We let fear-filled conversations seep in. We replay old wounds, old failures, old rejections, over and over again like a broken record. And then we wonder why nothing changes. Here's the truth: your subconscious is always recording. It doesn't differentiate between a real experience and a vividly imagined one. It accepts what you repeatedly impress upon it as truth. So if you keep replaying scenes of lack, scenes of sickness, scenes of failure, that's what your subconscious assumes you want more of. It's not punishing you. It's serving you. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do, manifesting in the outer world what you've impressed upon it in the inner world. This is why affirmations work when done correctly. This is why visualization is so powerful when done with feeling. This is why prayer, true prayer, changes lives, because it impresses the subconscious with a new image, a new belief, a new expectation. But here's the catch. You can't just say the words. You can't mechanically repeat phrases and expect miracles. The subconscious responds to emotion. It responds to belief. It responds to feeling. When you affirm something, you must feel it as already true. You must enter into the spirit of the thing. You must become it in your imagination before it can become real in your experience. This is what the mystics meant when they said, "Believe you have received it and it will be yours." They weren't talking about wishful thinking. They were talking about impressing the subconscious with such clarity and conviction that it has no choice but to outpicture that belief into form. And here's where so many people stumble. They try to impress the subconscious while holding contradictory beliefs. They affirm abundance while inwardly feeling lack. They visualize success while harboring deep-seated convictions of unworthiness. And the subconscious, which cannot argue but only accepts, becomes confused by these mixed signals. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot impress your subconscious with wealth while simultaneously impressing it with poverty. You cannot build faith while feeding fear. The subconscious mind accepts the dominant impression, the feeling tone that carries the most emotional weight and repetition. This is why your habitual thoughts matter so profoundly. It's not the occasional positive affirmation that shapes your life, it's the constant internal dialogue you maintain throughout your day. It's the thoughts you think when nobody's watching. It's the beliefs you hold so deeply that you don't even recognize them as beliefs anymore, you simply accept them as facts. I've seen people spend 15 minutes visualizing prosperity and then spend the remaining 23 hours and 45 minutes worrying about bills. And they wonder why their visualizations don't work. The subconscious doesn't respond to your 15 minutes of effort, it responds to your dominant mental habit. Your work, then, is to establish a new dominant impression, to consistently, persistently, and faithfully impress upon your subconscious the reality you wish to experience, not occasionally, not when it's convenient, but as a disciplined practice, a sacred commitment to your own transformation. When you catch yourself thinking thoughts that contradict your desired outcome, you gently redirect. You don't fight the negative thought that only gives it power. You simply replace it with its opposite. You starve the old pattern and feed the new one. Over time, with patience and persistence, the new impression becomes dominant, the new belief becomes habitual, and what was once difficult and effortful becomes natural and automatic. This is what makes the practice of mental rehearsal so powerful. When you repeatedly visualize yourself thinking, feeling, and acting from your desired state, when you see yourself as confident, prosperous, healthy, loved, you're not just daydreaming. You're imprinting. You're making deposits into the subconscious bank. You're training your inner mind to accept a new picture of reality. And here's what many people miss. You don't need to wait until circumstances change to feel the feeling. You generate the feeling first. You claim the state first. You become it in consciousness before it manifests in form. That's the secret that separates those who transform their lives from those who remain stuck in patterns of limitation. When you feel prosperous now, not when the money comes, but now you activate the law. When you feel healthy now, not when the symptoms disappear, but now you initiate the healing process. When you feel worthy and loved now, not when someone validates you, but now you magnetize experiences that reflect that inner conviction. The subconscious doesn't argue with the dominant feeling. It accepts it as instruction and begins to orchestrate circumstances, events, and encounters that correspond to it. This is not magic. This is mental law. This is how your mind works. So the question becomes, what are you impressing upon your subconscious right now? What feelings are you habitually entertaining? What mental images are you dwelling upon day after day? Because whatever you're consistently impressing, you're going to experience. The subconscious is always working, always creating, always outpicturing the contents of your habitual thinking. It never stops. It never takes a day off. It's producing results right now based on the material you've given it. And this brings us to a beautiful realization. You have the power to change the material. You have the ability to select new thoughts, cultivate new feelings, and impress new beliefs. You are not a victim of your subconscious programming. You are the programmer. Every moment is an opportunity to make a new impression. Every meditation, every visualization, every affirmation, every conscious choice to redirect your thinking, these are not small things. These are the tools by which you reshape your entire life experience. You are not a passive recipient of life. You are the active creator of your experience. And the power to create anew is always present, always available, always within your grasp. Think of a sculptor standing before a block of marble. Every strike of the chisel is intentional. Every chip removed is purposeful. The sculptor doesn't lament the shape the stone held yesterday, they focus entirely on the form they're revealing today. Your subconscious mind is that marble, and your thoughts are the chisel. What will you carve? I want you to understand something profound. Your past does not have to be your future. The patterns that have dominated your life until now are not permanent fixtures, they are simply well-worn paths in your consciousness. And paths can be redirected. New routes can be forged. Fresh destinations can be reached. Every time you catch yourself falling into an old mental habit and consciously choose a new thought instead, you are doing sacred work. You are literally rewiring your brain, reprogramming your subconscious, and reshaping your destiny. This is not metaphor, this is mechanism. This is how transformation actually occurs. The bridge between where you are and where you want to be is built one thought at a time, one affirmation at a time, one visualization at a time, one feeling at a time. There are no giant leaps required, only consistent, conscious, deliberate practice. And here's what I know with absolute certainty. If you commit to this practice, if you genuinely apply these principles with faith and persistence, your life will change. Not because of magic, but because of law. The law of mind, the law of belief, the law of subconscious manifestation. You have been given the keys to your own transformation. The question is, will you use them?